name is Jenny, and I'm a wife and mom raising 2 kids. But I used to live a more glamorous life as a TV reporter. I was on the nightly news interviewing pop stars and politicians. So when I said goodbye to TV and hello to motherhood, I suddenly discovered what we moms are up against. We live in a world that tells us to be rich and famous, thin and successful. You know, almost nobody says, "Oh, hey, you're a mom? That's fabulous." But you are fabulous, and I'm here to tell you why.
It's the Channelmom Show, celebrating you with Jenny Dean Schmidt.
Alrighty, welcome back to the Channelmom Show, celebrating you, Mom. We're so glad to have you today, and we're talking about some really important things that and we've got some great advice from some people coming up. I'm really excited to welcome Kelsey Roberts and Catherine Lockhart of Generations of Virtue. Welcome, ladies, to the Channelmom Show.
Thanks. Thank you.
We're so glad to have you. And welcome back, Jolene Sadowski, our guest mom host.
Thank you.
We're so glad to have her. She's our first guest mom host. Isn't she fabulous? And she looks really good on camera, too. We are talking about culture shock, a survival guide for teens. And you guys were once teenagers. And you guys each have very different stories. I've had the pleasure of having coffee with you, so I know your background. But, man, you bring something to the table. Because one of you lived like 60% of all teenagers, 70% of all teenagers. One of you has chosen not to. So why don't we start with you, Kelsey? Can you tell us a little bit about your story so moms can understand who you are?
Yeah, of course. My background was, I grew up in a really conservative family. My parents never really said, "Hey, don't have sex." It was just we were kind of the typical family in that way. And I just, as I was growing up, I just thought that I would do what everybody else was doing. Like, why not? It looked fun. Mm-hmm. And so at a really young age, 13, 14, 15, became sexually active. I was drinking all the time. I was partying all the time. I found myself with guys I barely knew. By 17 years old, like most girls, you find yourself at Planned Parenthood. Relationship after relationship that was really, really damaging. And then by 19 years old, I became very, very depressed. I think I was just looking for something that I could not find. Like, I thought I would find it in a guy. I thought I would find it in the parties and in my friends, and none of us were happy. It wasn't like, a few of them, got off with being happy or anything like that. We were all miserable. We were all crying ourselves to sleep. It was a really unhappy existence. So, at 19 years old, I went through a really startling life change and just realized, you know what? I've tried everything and it's not working. So I'm miserable. I'm depressed at that point. I was suicidal. I was just so messed up. I realized I was going to have to try something else. So that's when life kind of changed for me really drastically.
Yeah.
And
for you, it was God.
For me, it was God. For me, that's all there was. But in a lot of ways, though, at the same time, there's so much that goes on with your brain and brain development that you can see that you have to come to your conclusion about what that's going to be. And for me, that was meeting Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it changed you.
Oh, tremendously. 180 degrees it changed me. It changed my life completely.
So you made a new commitment because you had a new respect for yourself, because you suddenly realized you were loved by the God of the universe. So and I think just about every mom would love for her daughter to think, oh, you know what, I'm loved by God, so I'm going to treat myself in a way that, as a human being who's loved by God, I deserve a certain kind of treatment, so I'm not going to throw my body around. I think just about any mom, if you asked her that, she'd love her daughter to feel that way about herself. I'm loved by God, so I'm going to treat myself well, right, Jolene?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I just make Jolene agree with me.
That's all. That's right. That's right.
But so that is the change for you. But you made a commitment, which was pretty impressive. What'd you do?
Now, my commitment, because of the situation I was in, all of my friends were doing this. All of them were sleeping around. They were drinking. They were doing all this stuff. So for me, it had to be really drastic. I didn't have a choice to stay in that environment. I couldn't just keep going to these parties and going, okay, well, I just won't drink. I was way too seeped into the lifestyle. Mm-hmm. So for me, I lost all of my friends. I had to change my cell phone number, change my email address. I went out of the country for a little while. I went out of state for a while. I had to make some really drastic changes in my life to barricade myself from going back to that lifestyle. Because it wasn't like the day I chose to leave it, it just went away. Oh, I just didn't want to do it anymore. That's ridiculous. Of course I did. But I remembered how painful it was, and I knew that I never wanted to go back to that lifestyle again.
Sure.
So, yeah.
And you and your husband committed to something. Your now husband.
Yeah. I got married 6 months ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. He's awesome. And he came from a lifestyle that was really wild as well. He came from a background of drinking and drugs and prostitution and, just a really wild lifestyle. Yeah, he really did.
As a kid, he was involved with prostitutes and brothels.
As a teen. He grew up in Southeast Asia, where that is very, very common. And he made a lot of really wild choices, but for him, God got a hold of him in a really powerful way when he was 19 years old as well. Now, he's on the other side of the world. I don't know him. Both of us at 19 years old committed that we would not go back to that lifestyle ever again.
So you remained pure until... Did you kiss before you got married?
We did not kiss until our wedding day. Now, for us...
Look at Jolene. I wish the radio audience could see Jolene. She's got huge eyes. So what do you think of that? What do you think of that?
To each his own, but I just think, what if you didn't like how he kissed? Okay. What if that wouldn't work for me?
Now, okay, I understand,
but good for you.
I mean, and I'm not going off saying, oh, everybody should do this, okay? But for us, I realized something really, really fast, that if we were actually going to get to know each other before we got married, like actually talk, use our mouths for something productive, we were going to have to put some really strong physical boundaries in place. Mm-hmm. The second thing is that I knew from my experience, okay, I like sex. I knew that from the very beginning, that if I was going to make that commitment, I was going to have to put some boundaries in place so that we wouldn't go too far. It is a slippery slope. And honestly, I meet people all the time that said, oh, you're crazy. What you're doing is not even possible. And for me, I'm a stubborn girl. I was like, I am going to prove to you it is. And so that was what we wanted to do.
How long were you together before you got married? Because if you're not kissing, like, okay, get married
over
in
a year.
A week.
Over a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
A year, Jolene.
Wow.
I know. And what I want to hear is the difference it made, but I also want to hear from Catherine. So I want everybody to know out there, we do have Catherine who has committed to being pure and has remained pure. And you're how old now?
I'm 24.
And so she's kept it. And by the way, folks, don't be sitting at home and thinking that these girls are unattractive, because they're not unattractive women, and that's not why they're doing it. They just made a commitment that they were going to do this. But before we get to you, Catherine, I just want Kelsey to explain to us. First of all, you had a whole lot of pain. It would be better if girls could just avoid that, because it's one thing to be in that lifestyle and have to barricade yourself, and moms are saying, well, I'm not going to make my kid do that. If they're already involved, then I'm not going to say, well, you got to cut off all your friends. But if they never got involved to begin with, do you wish you would have never gotten involved with it?
Oh, of course I do. One thing I tell moms is that, I understand it's really difficult for you to sit down with your daughter and say, honey, I don't want you to mess around with every guy that comes and tells you that you're pretty. I know that that's hard. It's hard to have those kind of conversations. I don't mean to downplay that at all. My parents were very well-meaning. It was just hard for them because of their own past to be able to say, you know what, Kels? We really don't want you to do this, this, and this, and be specific with your girls. But you know what? It's easier. It's easier for you to sit down and have that conversation with your girls and say, honey, I don't want you to do this, than it is to deal with somebody like me who has so many problems and so much baggage from their past.
Well, and no person looking at their 8-year-old girl wants her to have an STD, or wants her to be pregnant and poor, or wants her to be heartbroken, or wants her boyfriend beating her, or wants her to be receiving sex. Nobody wants it. I think they just don't want to think about it, so they just never have the talk.
But see, it's not an option. In today's culture, that's not an option.
So quickly before we get to Catherine, just tell me about this brain research that moms should know about.
Yeah. A lot of it is based on a book called Hooked. It's how casual sex is affecting our children. And they have done a lot of research on the brain development and chemicals that are in everyone's brain that are designed, whether you believe it's from God or elsewhere. Mother Nature put it there for a very specific purpose. It's created so that this chemical called oxytocin will release in a girl's brain. Now, originally that they thought that only occurred during things like sex and childbearing and nursing, but no, they found in recent research that is released during things like hand-holding and hugging and gazing at one another or positive emotional interaction. So you see these girls and they're like massaging their boyfriends, or they're holding a guy's hand and they're going, I don't like him. I mean, we're just having a good time. That chemical is released in their brain and they are bonded to that person for life. It's unavoidable. It's not controllable. So these girls have to understand, and for boys too, that they're actually being bonded to people that you don't want in your life forever. That guy's not your husband. He's probably not even your boyfriend. So it's really important that we understand that.
Yeah, and you carry those. I can't tell you how many women I talk to who are broken by all the past stuff they have, and they wish they just kind of would have never dabbled.
Yeah, of course.
And Catherine, you didn't dabble. So tell
No, I
us,
didn't.
how easy was that when you're a pretty girl, and how easy was that, or how hard?
You know, it's something that I have to work at every single day. I still remember being 15 years old, and when I was little, I had, all my role models were girls that were out partying, and they were out drinking and sleeping around, and I thought that was normal. Even though I grew up in a conservative family, I thought that's just something that you did. And then I'll never forget being about 15 and having a wake-up call. I had a conversation actually with my dad. And I was working at a restaurant, and my boss was a drug dealer, and I was working with college students, and everyone was sleeping around and drinking and on drugs. And I remember coming home from work one night and being like, yeah, basically I'm gonna do it, And I remember him sitting down with me and being like, do you remember these friends of mine and these people? And he started mentioning all of these people that I knew growing up, and all these women that I looked up to, and one in particular I'd always looked up to a lot. And she was super attractive, great body, great boyfriend. They lived together. He was the macho guy. He drove a Ferrari. They were awesome. They were the cool power couple. And I'd always wanted to be like them. And I'd always thought they were the epitome of cool. They were what I saw in the movies. And I'll never forget when he said, do you realize that she always wanted kids and he didn't? Do you know what she had to do to keep him? And I looked at him like, what are you talking about? And he goes, she had to have 5 abortions to keep him because she kept getting pregnant. He kept being like, I don't want to be I don't want to be a dad. I don't want this. And he started naming off to me all these different people that had similar stories. And I was shocked. It scared me. I was like, what? Because I was so deceived by the media, especially in MTV, and I thought this was just life. And so I remember that being a wake-up call, and then I started trying to find answers myself. And so I started looking at my friends that were dating and dabbling, and I started realizing that they were all depressed. And they would come crying to me and say, oh my gosh, he won't call me, and I'm so upset. Like, we made out, and we did all of this stuff, and I don't understand because now he won't call me, and, what is going on? And I started realizing all these people were miserable. And I honestly started looking around me and being like, okay, so who's happy? How do you be happy? I don't want to be miserable. How do you get happy?
And I want to get to some statistics because we've got about 4 minutes left, 3 or 4 minutes left. I want to say this thing, and then I want to give Jolene to ask either one of you a question. Mm-hmm. And I also want some statistics. If you could just throw a few in there about what happens, and here's why I want them. I think every mom listening, every dad listening, I challenge you, go in and look at your child while they're sleeping. Go in and look at your precious child while they're sleeping. And I know that even if it seems innocent, even if it seems like what everybody else is doing, you do not want what manifests out of a life that is promiscuous and provocative and so on. Look at that baby while they're sleeping and think about the statistics that follow a very sexually active, doing what everybody else does lifestyle. Tell me about some of the statistics.
Well, one thing is boys are 9 times more likely to be suicidal if they're sexually active, and that's just a national statistic by the Heritage Foundation, and girls are 3 times more likely.
Anything else?
So, absolutely suicidal.
STDs. I know it's about a third.
STDs are actually really shocking right now. For high school students in the United States, kids have a 1 in 4 chance of contracting an STD for every year in high school that they're sexually active. So that means like their freshman year, 1 in 4 chance. Sophomore year, 1 in 4 chance. It goes on and on. So you can kind of do the math yourself. As far as by the time that they're seniors, if they've been sexually active all 4 years, which most kids are, then your chances of coming out without an STD are pretty rare.
That's right. So my statistic was close. And I also understand that more and more boys, even at younger and younger ages, are watching porn. It's like up to something like 80% by the time they're 18 or something.
The national average for boys pornography, when they're exposed to pornography, is between the ages of 8 and 11. That's their first exposure time. The key time that the pornography...
From talking to my son's friends, that's true.
Yeah. The pornography wants to get them hooked between the ages of 8 and 11. The largest consumers of pornography nationally in the United States are between the ages of 11 and 19, and that's boys and girls. It's not just boys. People seem to think that like boys are the only ones watching porn. That's total crap.
Okay, Jillian, we have literally like 30 seconds. Is there any last thing you want to ask them?
Do you find at 24, are you still getting peer pressure from friends about staying pure?
I do, but by now I've seen the result. I'm happy, and my friends that are pressuring me are the ones that are depressed.
Yeah.
And so I don't listen. It's easier to say no.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Catherine, Kelsey, Jolene, I'm so happy that we are here honoring mothers and that we're trying to tell them how to do better with their kids or how to keep doing better. There are a lot of them are doing a great job. So thank you so much, all of you, and Julie and Shelly. Thanks all so much for being here with us today. Honoring mothers, that's what we're here to do. So thank you, and helping their kids. You are listening to the Channel Mom Show, where we are celebrating you, Mom. Don't forget that, right here on Mile High Sports Radio, AM 1510, FM 93.7. You can also watch us all week on channelmom.com if you want to refer somebody to this show. Maybe your teenager that needs to watch what Kelsey and Catherine had to say. Okay, on next week's show, it's going to be good. Girls and self-esteem. Because, again, the culture cuts them down, makes them feel fat, all kinds of things. Girls and self-esteem. So please tune in for that next week with an expert. We'll see you then.